be finding it.
No.
Can I start?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 26th, 2024 meeting of the Portsmouth School Board. Got it so yucky out there tonight, but spring is coming, right?
Sure.
Okay, let's somewhere, right? Can we have the roll call, please, Patty?
Sure. Liz Barrett. Here. Pip Clues. Here. Tish Campbell.
Here.
Terry Nolte.
Here.
Brian French.
Here.
Nancy Clayberg.
Here.
Lisa Rappaport. Not yet. Lee Hudson.
Here.
Byron Maddow.
Here.
And Nathan Delaney.
Here.
Thank you, Patty. Can we all stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance?
She's cracking board.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next, we have announcements and recognitions. Zach, do you want to start?
Yeah, quick, just coming back to a conversation we had at the last meeting, which was around what our approach to April 8th, the eclipse day is going to be. After a lot of consultation with a lot of folks, we went back and forth a bit. Ultimately, we're going to end up having a full day of school on that day. And the driving kind of thought process of that is a couple of things. One, we have a previously scheduled half day earlier in that same week. We have a little bit of a concern about our capacity to be able to offer after school programming on those half days to all families. We think that might be problematic. So we will encourage families if they would like to, pull kids out to go do activities connected with the eclipse. We'll encourage them to do so. And then different schools right now are working on different plans about how they'll approach it. But we will be open for the full day on April 8th. So.
Okay. Any other announcements from anyone? Okay. Thank you, Zach. Let's move on to the consent agenda. We have one set of minutes, March 12th, 2024. Do we have a motion to approve the March 12th minutes? Thank you, Brian. Second, Byron. Any discussion on the minutes? Pip?
Yeah, I noticed in under the consent agenda B, it notes that the motion passed with revisions, but it doesn't know what those revisions are. And I think that we should probably make a practice to note what they are in the minutes when it says that they are revised.
Which one?
I don't have the notes on what the revisions were, but hopefully somebody does.
I had the notes. It was a lot of references to to Nathan when it should have been Nancy calling the question. There was Alice Carey was misspelled. She was the speaker that night in public session, public comment. And there were maybe one or two other small things. They were clerical kinds of things, but
Okay.
I documented those and handed those forward. So, but I think I agree. You probably want to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
wanna
it feels like we could be approving anything by saying, with revisions. So I think it should be, even if they're, even if maybe it needs to say small grammatical changes or something like that, but just a note about what the revisions were would be helpful.
And if I remember the motion right, I don't think there was a lack of specificity in the motion. And we didn't, I think we had a discussion that pointed out different things that were problematic. And I think the motion was kind of like, we'll pass it with those changes that we need to make. So we might need to be more specific in some of our motions.
Yeah, I think that's typical though. I mean,
Yeah.
we usually do say with revisions, but
Yeah.
I'm just pointing out that
Or as
in
long as it
minutes,
shows up
I
in the
think
minutes.
that should
No,
probably
that's
be
fine.
noted,
Yeah, we can do that.
or at least a reference to what they were related to.
Thank you, Pip. We'll be sure to do that. Carrie?
Just at the very end, just a typo, Superintendent McLaughlin said he toured all the elementary schools recently. I assume it's supposed to be with Lee or something like that.
We can add that. That's not a problem. Okay. So do we approve these? Oh, we have to have a roll call.
Yes.
Go ahead, Patty.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
I wasn't here, so I stayed.
Okay. Terry Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yeah.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Passed.
Okay, thank you. We move on to the public comment session. It looks like there's no one here for public comment. Do we have anyone on remote for public comment?
Nobody on remote.
Okay, we close the public comment session. And move on to the superintendent's report. Zach, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so we'll start with the quarterly. I won't read through it all, just as a reminder. This dates back to my original entry into the school district and conversations with the board around a couple of strategic initiatives, one being developing a strategic plan for the school district and the other communication plan. We've developed this format over time, and I have updates for you. I think probably the best thing to do is if folks have questions concerning those updates, I'm happy to answer anything you have questions about.
Any questions for Zach? Brian?
Yeah, just on the, I noticed on the strategic plan, you had actions and then timeline.
Yep.
But each one of those had a status of red.
Right.
Was one.
So those were items, I gave you these non-completed items, although
That's what.
I did notice as I was reviewing stuff for tonight's meeting, like if that included, some of those things are now green.
Okay.
That were.
So it just means done, not done.
Done, not done.
Got it.
Yes, yep,
Okay.
yep. So there are other, in our kind of tracking document that left off stuff that came before it that was.
Any other questions about the strategic plan? No? I know many of us are involved in it and
Yeah.
it's been going well, I think.
Well, the next couple of meetings are gonna be really important. So I look, so we look forward to seeing what comes out of those next few conversations.
Okay, do you want to continue?
Only other thing I will mention is the scope survey. So the contract signed, we have done since this document went out to you folks, we done the initial conversations with the company, and that will include worked on trying to have the survey incorporate all of the primary languages spoken by the school district. We're going to come up just a hair short, but we'll be in languages available in 8 different languages. Still working with Rob in the case, and then we'll do a rollout sometime in the near future to push that out to all. Yeah, I think hopefully we get really good data about that, which will.
The stats are very interesting to me, and I was just curious about the like female to male, the demographic pieces.
Huh?
And I'm just curious if that's typical or if there maybe are other strategies that reach.
I would say a couple things. One, so in my previous work, there'll come a time where we'll have to not allow me to ever speak about a district I work with. So in the previous work in the previous district.
I still
Would-
think you're talking about The Simpsons when you say Springfield. So I mean,
Well,
we all live in
there's
Springfield.
a story about that, but I won't get into it now. So we saw similar data in terms of the fact that particularly women in that age bracket, really it was really 30s and 40s primarily. That was the core of our social media audience that liked us, followed us. That was the core of our engagement audience. That was the kind of across the board on Facebook, and then across other platforms. So it mirrored that, and so we would have some conversations about to what extent are there different ways in which we can outreach in terms of hitting the male portion of a household when there is a male present. We and I think other districts have similar struggles in that regard, and I think it's still the conclusion we came to was that basically this was reasonably reflective of kind of the stickiness of traditional parenting roles to a certain extent. So I don't want to cave to that trend. And simultaneously, I think it is reflective of what I've seen in the past, and I think other schools see in terms of these types of things.
One other.
Go ahead.
It would be was interesting to me to just think about whatever the communication platform we use, which I can't remember the name of.
Offer.
Or no, the
Parent Square.
Parent Square. If there's different engagement by gender on that, or if it's, but, the one question, the channels with transactions that are less active, are those,
Go ahead.
can you help me understand what those are, or?
So I think I gotta look at my, I think so if you look at, I think what I'm trying to communicate, didn't do particularly well. I don't know if transactions is the right word, but it's like where are people engaged and where are they not, and so it's reasonably dramatic that the Facebook page is where we get a lot of action. The 624 followers, more schools is the district X. So it's interesting that where we see followers and where we don't. Now, what's important to realize is some of these are newer accounts. That there have been some accounts that are connected with the schools that are either connected to the PTA, PTOs at schools. Some of those have large followings, but those are not my channels. I don't control those channels. So they are not part of this platform. I don't dictate what they, what they do. So you're not seeing the full kind of social media ecosystem for the district, but you're seeing the parts that we have control.
I think Lisa had a question and then Pip.
Oh, thanks, Nancy. Yeah, I really like seeing the detail on how things are going with social media. I guess I'm curious about what you're hoping to find out from the survey that you're doing next quarter. And I'm also curious about sort of what's next. Like, are you thinking about tackling newsletters, or are there other things that you see as a next need once social media is more in hand? So I guess I'm just kind of curious where you're trying to take things with the survey.
So the survey, and I haven't gone through, I'll be really transparent, Lisa, in that I had my initial kind of induction thing where they reach out to me, they ask me about our schools, I give them information about some of the different platforms we're using, and then they're constructing a template they're going to send to me about what's going to be included. So I'm initially going to look at what they give me. I'm assuming that what I'm going to have as part of that, based on what I've seen from their stuff before, is that this will include opportunities for people to tell us about, in addition to social media, their engagement with things like Parent Square, their impressions of our website and web presence, and just generally where do they get information. So some of what I gave them was were things like making sure people are going to be asked about things like weekly newsletters generated through the schools. Is that where the primary source of information for folks, and are they engaging in those types of things? I'm also hoping that this won't be a page by page dive on the website, but I think we'll have information on the website too around people's general impressions about the effectiveness or lack of effectiveness of what we currently offer. So my hope is that basically coming out of that, we have an opportunity in May to look at the data and then make decisions about if social media is kind of moving, then what's the next big thing to tackle? Is it a reconsideration of something like Parent Square, or is it a deeper dive on redesigning the website? So.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Now we have Pip and then Byron.
Thanks. I have a couple questions. My question actually is similar to what Lisa just asked, but I guess I'm wondering more specifically, in terms of the current use of social media and that I know you've invested time and financial resources into setting up a person at each school to work on these, which just seems like it's working out well. What is your hope in using social media? Are you just at this point trying to build an audience, or are you trying to
Great.
send out information through it?
So, I mean, right now, the kind of the marching orders for folks have been that, who are doing the stuff is we're trying to build an audience, and we're trying to build an audience through, for the most part, around giving people kind of a day-to-day peek behind the curtain, because I think we deal with a lot of folks imagine that today's school experience is basically whatever their school experience was, with kids wearing slightly different clothes. And it's not in a lot of cases, or there's a lot of things we do that people aren't aware of. So I think there's a desire to, like I said, show people, give people a clearer picture of what's happening in the schools, when we can. And then that does allow us the opportunity, once we build that audience, though, to, to, whether it's around emergency communications or other things, to then utilize that audience when we need to. But I think the goal right now is just, let's build an audience if we can, around these platforms. Then we're going to see what takes, and we have the ability to go back and even that one screenshot about what are the posts that people are responding to the most, and what do we notice about those posts, and what does that tell us about where we should concentrate our efforts, and then even more, more importantly, what do people not respond to at all? So why waste your time? And I think those are some of the conversations we want to have. The truth is, though, that we are, I think I referred to it in my report as like this is a sonar ping in some ways. Like we're generating content around that basic, like, pull back the curtain. We're sending it out into the world, and then we're going to be in a position, as we roll into the late spring, to sit back down with some folks and be like, okay, right now we're moving so fast, really don't have time we're not looking at the data and making a lot of big decisions. But can we sit down later and say, how do we adjust kind of our approach, our strategy? Are there things that you can make an argument based on some of our response to some of the X accounts? It's not even a point. Why would we bother? And so, I mean, those are some of those types of decisions we can make based on that data sometime late spring and summer.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. And then my other question was just in terms of the engagement increases, what is that in comparison to? Or what's the period of time?
So this right here is, I think, I'm trying to recall, I believe the snapshot I gave you on that engagement rate is in relation to the current quarter. So it was the quarter that just went past. So I think this was January 1 to the day that I was putting together the
Oh,
report.
okay. It does say that at the top. Yeah.
So this is prior
just-
to that period of time. It's not a comparison to the previous quarter. This is just comparing it to, the previous work up to January 1.
And is that when you started having the
Yeah.
new people? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, we did some stuff, in all honesty, we did a little, we did some dabbling on several of the accounts in December, but we weren't telling anybody. So that when people came over in January, there was something there, and it wasn't like, oh, there's one post, but yeah, so the promotion of stuff really started as we got into January.
Oh, Byron.
Yeah, I'm gonna say two contradictory things, I think. So
Try to thread the needle and hit
Yeah.
right in the middle. Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that each school seems to have like an Instagram and an X, but not a Facebook, and the school department has Facebook. And so I just like general, like, and it also seems like Facebook has the highest impressions. I mean,
Yep.
maybe so I think it's interesting that the schools don't, but maybe again, like the PTAs have Facebook presences. I don't really know, could we not see those channels here, but so I think it's so in that regard, like maybe they should be there. And then the contradictory statement is like, these are a lot of channels, and like probably too many channels. You probably know that. So so that's sort of like my two observations there on the overall social strategy. That's
And I would say, just on the too many, one of the great things about Buffer is that it allows us to not folks can go in.
You're just pushing out, yeah.
You're pushing,
Yeah, yeah.
You're going in with a single set of content.
Yeah.
And you're pushing out to multiple places. So I'd be more stressed out at the moment of writing out the spring, doing this, if I had people creating
And I
individual
think-
stuff for
Yeah, I think
individual
that's
channels.
less concern that and more concern from the consumer side around source of truth. Right? I think that's where like my concern would be is just like noise and source of truth,
Yeah.
Parent Square. Now there's 3 socials per school.
Yep.
And like a main social for the district itself.
Yep.
Like what is source of truth for the communications coming out of yeah.
And I think the hope is, again, we can use the data to peel back,
Yeah.
as we come into the next school year. So, so I'm looking forward to those conversations, because we want to, I want to have effective communication, and if it's all white noise.
Yeah.
Then people don't have.
Okay, any other questions about the communication plan? Thank you, Zach. You have done a lot of work on this since you came here.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And we set it up
other
as
people
one of
do.
your goals,
Yeah.
so you're making a lot of progress. Thank you.
I think we're like anything, the more you do, the more questions you have. So, but we're keep on, keep it on. Yep.
Okay. What's next? The email summary, did you talk about?
Oh,
that?
actually, the memo is separate, but all those things are, I think they generally speak for themselves. Well, I mentioned general assurances.
Oh, yeah.
General assurances are come later as an agenda item. Those are things that in order for us to qualify for federal grants, we, and I guess in this state, they must not have trusted some superintendents who are bad. Because now they want school boards to make sure it's on their agenda, that they have an opportunity to be aware of what are the things that we as a school district must do in order to qualify for federal grants. And so we have this singular document that lists out, here are all the things for all the different types of federal grants that we take. Those are things like Title I that are generally for low socioeconomic students or students who struggle. Title II, which is for training. Title IV, how would we describe Title IV at this point?
Title
It's a hodgepodge.
Title IV is a hodgepodge. It's technology, well-rounded education. Those kinds of things. It's a catch-all right now.
IDEA, which is the
Special
special
education.
education grants. We receive money connected with the CTE program,
Perkins, yeah.
Perkins. And right now we also have a federal grant that's connected to, it's called Promising Futures, which is connected to some work we're doing in relation to some addiction, substance abuse work with Seacoast Seacoast Youth Services.
Yep.
So.
And also Title III, if we qualify this year for our ELL students.
So there's a variety of these different federal grants. What the state used to do, a lot of states used to do, is you had individual sets of assurances connected to each of these grants, because the feds apply certain expectations they have. Instead, what they've created is, here's one big old document for New Hampshire, and you have to, basically we promise to do the things that we need to do. Primarily, that's my responsibility, but then the board chair also has to sign off that I attest that we understand the superintendent's supposed to do this. And so anyways, so I just referenced that in the memo real quick, but that's coming up. You have batch approval of the teacher and administrator contracts that will be coming up. I mentioned the sealed minute process. We talked about how Pip and Lisa will work with my office to review minutes and then come back with a recommendation to all of you about which minutes will be continued to be sealed or opened from our existing set. And I also just mentioned that we had some conversation about JCA, which is around the hardship placement, and we still are waiting to process some information from the attorneys on that. So we hope to have that at the next meeting for you. And then GBCD, which was around background check reviews. And we're also waiting for some final stuff to process through attorneys for that as well. So we hope to have that on the April agenda.
Okay. Any questions for Zach? Okay, we'll move right on to.
I don't think there's any action on the email summary.
Okay, That's just a point of information.
And then you have
And
the
the
two,
overnight field trips.
two overnight trips. And the only thing I'll mention on that is just that the performing arts trip does not include a number. Because it's going to take us a little bit while to have a number of students. But we said, don't wait any longer, get that in. We need to go ahead and approve the other aspects of it. And then we'll make sure that in terms of the number of chaperones and stuff, that those things are in place.
That will be a large number of students.
Yeah.
I can't remember my kids went, and I think 100 kids went.
I think it will be that large this time around. But it will be.
Lisa,
Hey, Nancy, I just have a quick question on the overnight trips that I was reminded of based on the performing arts trip. But Zach, is there any plan in place to update procedures for travel to account for our updated policies on overnight trips, and particularly with travel to Florida, updated policies on protecting LGBTQ students, including during travel? And I don't need you to answer that right now, but I guess I just wanted to put that out there because I wasn't sure how we are implementing those policies.
I'll give you a quick version and then a acknowledgement of a need for a deeper dive. So
Fair.
there is an understanding amongst principals and folks who are, and then through them, folks who are running trips, that we need to adhere to JBAB in terms of how we're organizing running those trips. I don't know. I don't have an answer for you on the Florida piece. And I have not had a conversation, and I haven't jostled with where Florida might challenge our ability to implement JBAB. But our goal and intent is to implement JBAB in our trips.
okay, thank you, Lisa. Anyone else with a question? Okay, let's move on to correspondence.
So most of these are things you do not, these are
Informational.
you have multiple retirements and resignations. You also have a request to rescind a previously granted leave of absence request. I don't believe you have to take action on any of these.
Okay, we have kind of a bittersweet resignation in this
Yeah,
file.
it's an important one at the
And
end.
that's with Nathan Looney, who's gonna be leaving our school department to go work for our city as the assistant city manager / financial director. So Nathan, we're very sad you're leaving us, but thrilled for the position that you'll be going to. Someday, I told you, someday you'll be a city manager, then you can run for state rep, then you'll be the governor. I have a
Go
whole
right for
pathway
governor.
planned out for her. So, but thank you for all that you've done for the school department over all these years, your dedication, your loyalty, your outstanding personality, which adds to the joy of working with you. So, we miss you, but we're glad you're gonna be here and we'll still see you all the time.
Yeah, I want you to know that this was for me, I hate the use of the phrase, but let me use it. This for me was a terminal position. I really believe, and I can tell you from my colleagues in the state, that Portsmouth is the jewel. If you can arrive, you've arrived when you land in Portsmouth as the business administrator. And I certainly would not have left to go be a business administrator in another school district, but the lure of working for your community and being here on the city side in this new role, it was a lot. It was a lot to consider, and I'm really excited about it, and even more excited about the possibility that I know as much as I do about the school department as I go to that role. I will tell you that the just retired finance director and the deputy finance director both started their city careers here in the school department and made that migration. So I hadn't really given that thought when I contemplated this, but schools have always been well represented in city leadership, and you will. The details of the transition are still ongoing between the superintendent and the city manager. And but I do know that this seat is a priority. We won't really find a new person. We don't do this mid-year. Business administrators will come when they finish June 30th somewhere else. So I'm here with you and we'll continue to be at your meetings. I expect right through, and then we'll be involved in whatever transition. I had the luxury of 9 months with Steve Bartlett when he retired. Now, most of that was tied up in COVID. So we didn't actually get to sit side by side very much, but it'll be nice to be right down the hall so that even when you have a BA in place, if you have questions. And if they have questions I can answer, I'll be nearby. So thank you for the kind words. I love being here, so it'll be great to stay here.
And so posting will go up tomorrow, and we'll start our process of trying to find the next person. But I think, Nathan is very committed to making sure that we transition in a solid way. And I know, city manager is also, very committed to and understands exactly what Nathan said, which is this is not a position generally where they don't become free right now. And so really it's a fiscal year kind of cycle, when folks are going to become available. So we'll go through, that process, but I know Nathan will help shepherd us through that. And I know the city is committed to, making sure that we're in strong shape throughout. And then we're going to have the benefit of having Nathan down the hallway, as we have somebody trying to get their feet wet with us, which is going to be really great for us. And I'm sure there's a lot of good synergies that will come out of that whole situation.
For what it's worth, those of you that have been around a long time, Steve Bartlett is still a phone call away and was there when I called. And Peter Torrey, who was the BA before him, he still shows up downstairs once in a while. I can see him in the building. And so I'm in good company for sure. I'm in great company with those guys. It's nice to know that they're always around if we need something.
And I have to tell you, my cousin Joe Bove, my first cousin, he's 88 years old. He moved to Portsmouth to be the business administrator for the school department. How many years ago? And that was the day that SAU 50 didn't exist. So he had to go to with the superintendent, they had to go to every single school board meeting in the towns, Newington, Rye, Newcastle, Greenland, and Portsmouth. It was quite a job back
Well, I'm glad he took care of that.
You and me both.
I talked to him the other night. I said, Joe, would you like your job back? He's 88 years old. He's sharp as a tack. He could do it, but
You-
not at 88.
They might not notice the difference.
Have his people call my people. We'll see what we can do.
Well, thank you, Nathan.
Thank you.
And I guess we move it on to you with the.
Yeah, let's
financial memo and
let's
report.
put the screws to him on the
Yeah,
financial.
right,
So-
exactly.
So it's the financials continue to tell the same basic story. I don't think subs have popped up a bit, substitute salaries, but there still are some adjustments we made. I identified a couple the other day that teachers that you just talked about in non-public, that whose resignations are here in the list. We have a couple of situations where they're simply gone. They're not here on sick leave collecting a paycheck. So we're taking steps this month. We just identified that, taking steps to move those costs out of subs and get them into the salary lines where they're actually reasonably allocated. And so we have a couple of those incidents where subs look a little bit overinflated, but I still think the number is fairly indicative of what it'll look like end of year. All in all, I think I still think the number in teachers is strong. We had savings that came out of the hiring process. So I think that number is on target. I think it's worth, if you want to take just a minute, in the course of the budget discussion, we had conversation about staffing and budgets at the Lister Academy and also the tuition and fees. One of the key comments that I know was observed was, wow, in the budget, there's only one para at the high school. How could that be? And so if you look at your page 4, you had this information in the previous incarnation of the financial report. So we've only been the balance of this year to date without it, because I wanted you to start with the general fund and become familiar with the new format of the report. But the special revenue funds on the 4th page, those are first Lister Academy, which, as I've told you before, is funded. It has 3 stools, if you will, of funding, 3 legs of the stool, I should say. There's some of the dollars that come from SAU 50 sending towns in their tuition bill that's allocated against the Lister, not for specific students, but because all of those students are Portsmouth high school students and they pay a flat fee for all high school students. And so there's a portion of that tuition bill that's allocated against Lister. Years ago, they used to calculate that separately and bill it separately. Now it's all been tucked in. The second piece is in your general fund, you have a transfer of, I think this year it's $357,000. It's in the area of tuitions. It's where we keep it, that big $3 million tuition pocket. that we talked about out-of-district tuitions, there's a chunk there that goes to Lister to help pay for Portsmouth's share of Lister. And then the third leg is that there are students who are not from Portsmouth or SAU 52 communities. And they are essentially special education placements. Their kids are out of district, like we might have an out-of-district student in Massachusetts in Beverly at a site or somewhere else. They have students, and this is a student maybe coming from Raymond, a student coming from Rochester, a student coming from Keene. Keene might be kind of far to travel in every day. Sorry, that was a bad example. So they actually are paying just over 50, it's $50,400, I think, this year, is the tuition figure. So this first section, Robert J. Lister Academy, is funded by those three components. And it has just the staffing that I think you're aware of only because you know the school, because they didn't show up in your general fund budget, but there are, there's a director, you've met Steve Kay has been in to talk to you in the past. And then there are 5 teachers who are working over there and a para who is there working with students as well. They have a clerical who assists in the office, and they have a part-time custodian that they share with New Franklin. So all of that budget is here. The second piece of that then is called special ed tuition and fees. We call it 207 because that's the fund designation in-house. So it's been called 207 for years. And this is something that over time I'd like to phase out. I think Lister will always want to keep always want to have its own cost center. If at some point it stopped being funded by out-of-district kids and was only us, it was only our kids, SAU 50 and 52, I think there'd be an argument made to bring all of its expenditures and revenue back into the general fund and have it as a cost center, just like our other schools. But for now, because it's funded in a self-sufficient way, it stays as a special revenue. Special ed tuition and fees, the thing we call 207, exists still as a legacy because years and years ago, when the area agreement under which SAU 50 communities pay tuition to us, that spelled out that all kids would pay a flat tuition rate, but special ed kids, identified students with, identified students with an IEP, those costs related to those kids were all broken out, identified, and billed individually back to those communities. And so all of those related costs were orphaned, if you will, out in a special revenue fund. And at the close of every year, Portsmouth would transfer an element of support to cover Portsmouth costs that were there. And the bill would go to the SAU 50 communities, and their income, their revenue stream, their tuitions would come back to pay. So over the years, they have adjusted the way that billing happens under the area agreement. And just as they've tucked in the tuitions related to the Lister Academy program, so too all the special ed costs are now tucked in. Today, SAU 50 communities get a single bill based on a single rate for all students that they have coming to Portsmouth, the high school, and in a small number of cases, the middle school. All students that receive services are covered under that tuition rate, including special ed services. If a student is placed out of district because they're not best served here, we've had that conversation over the last few weeks in the budget process. If they're not best served here and they end up in an out of district placement, and the SAU 50 community owns the responsibility and the costs related to that placement. So our out of district costs that you've seen in the budget are only Portsmouth students. Any students from those other 4 communities that are not here are being paid for by their community through the other district. But all that are here are covered under that flat fee, regardless of the level of services they get. So this tuition and fees fund is essentially a legacy where it's still orphaned out there, but you can see it's roughly $2 million. And that's where somebody said, there's only one pair at the high school. No, there's 15 or 17, whatever it is. It's because the rest of them are all out here because historically that's where they all got charged, because then they got split up depending on who they were serving. So I've reintroduced this now, and you'll get to continue to see how it goes, but it's very much in both cases, predominantly people. There's a small operating amount in 207 in the special ed tuition and fees, but that hardly ever gets used. And should easily go away because it'll be easier to track. It won't be anything lost. there are some operating dollars related to Lister Academy, but you'll notice the consumption so far to date on 150,000, they spent just over 50. So. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for, yes, Liz?
So I just want to be clear that, these amounts are, this is essentially what the cost is for, oh my gosh, I lost, I scrolled too far. It's for the total cost for operating Lister, is within this page right here. So you would add the Lister cost plus the special ed tuition and fees, and that would be the total cost currently.
Not for
for-
Lister. Lister's
running.
just the first section. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay, I thought you were,
First half of the page is Lister.
I thought you said though, so like the para educators at Lister are actually included within the special ed tuition and fees.
No, special ed, the para that I talked about, you'd see him on line 106, just a 4 inches.
There's only one.
It's just one.
There's just one, and right now, that position's vacant, if you will, it's not vacant, but that position's being charged to the other section. Because there's some shared, I don't remember.
So is there any way to actually see, I know it's sort of this blend, is there any way to actually see what the actual operating cost of Lister Academy is? I know we have sort of a picture right here, but it seems like there's like some positions that are shared, there's, so is there a way to sort of really break down the actual costs? And then you don't have, I know you're talking about what the cost of tuition is, but that's not in any of these documents, right? That you have right now?
Right now, you're looking at a budget report, so you're looking at the expenditure side.
Yeah, so but is there any way to, I guess as we.
Is there a
move-
hypothesis that you're trying to get to that
Like
I
the
can help
net-
you with?
is
Well,
it-
no, I guess, you sort of pulled this document out for us because we had sort of had the conversations about Lister and whatnot. And so I think it'd be super helpful at some point, maybe on the agenda, to talk about Lister. I know actually one of my updates for the rec department was that they recently got a community finance authority $1 million award from them to go towards the campus. I think it's partly the rec part, but also towards, it seems like some of the Lister stuff, it's the technology, some of the upgrades, they're gonna move tenants around, security. So I guess I'm wondering, and it seems like based on the email from the rec department, that the Lister Academy at the community campus is now going to, is going to be ready to go or completed, sometime sooner than later so that the kids could start next year. So I guess I'm just wondering if we could have an overall conversation at some point about Lister, look at the actual obviously our budget's probably going to change a little bit as we move to this new building and what that might look like, but really, what the cost is, what we're charging, what what the revenue is, and have a conversation about the program and what we're looking at right now.
So I should go back because for the public consumption, the $1 million has nothing to do with Lister Academy.
No, I know.
That-
I guess I was
Well,
gonna ask
you just
about it
said a
later,
second
yeah.
ago That you thought that a lot of that was going to Lister.
Well, no, it's
$1
going
million
to
is
the
for
rec
the
department.
Rec department at the community campus. You're funding, the school department is already funding, with the city support through the capital plan, we're funding a $3.3 million project to renovate the lower level space. It's about 13,000 square feet. And if we haven't had enough of an update, I think it would be important for us to have an update, and maybe you guys are ready for a field trip. It'd be
We
time
just
to go
did,
see it.
we just
Yeah,
did
we
one
did
with
a
the,
field-
Had the kids there the other
we
day.
just did, yeah.
And so we
The
should go
drywalls are up,
so that
yeah.
you can see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
drywall is up. And I talked to Monty Bahanden the other day, suggested that we take some pictures or a video, because as you see the drywall going up, which is all kind of grayish white, you'll notice all the framing of doors and windows throughout the space. And a few of them are dark gray, kind of like your laptop. But the overwhelming majority of them are bright yellow, which was the paint scheme of the previous space. And they have reused all of these frames. And if I could tell you, if I could contemplate for you the dollar amount of savings in the fact that they didn't have to remanufacture all of these metal frames. But from a sustainability perspective, the energy not consumed or expended in that effort, it simply paints a beautiful picture. And right now, I said, grab the picture, because before they start painting next week, you can actually see
Yeah.
the yellow step out as opposed to the, so we should get you in there and get you to see that. Go back to the budget. This is the budget. It's $1 million if they spent it all. The funding, as I said, is three-legged, and one piece comes out of your general fund. And the other piece, second piece comes from SU 50, a piece of their revenue, their tuition revenue, and then the third is external, and we certainly can put that together if you'd like to look at it as a separate standalone, for sure. But the budget is not measurably different for next year. In that $157,000 of operating are carrying costs for heat and lights, et cetera, because we're paying that ourselves at the Sherburne School, the building that they're currently in, and we'll shift over and pay those costs related to the space that we have at the community campus as well. So
I just want to be clear too. I know you said that the grant was just for the rec department, but in the email from the rec department, it did talk about security, moving things around to meet needs, the IT infrastructure. So it seems like some of this is going to like trickle into our like sort of, I mean,
they're all different. So
I guess
we have a separate security system going in. We do use the same electricity coming in, but they've metered it separately. I'll talk to Director Henley to make sure that the communication is fair and reasonable, because there's been no discussion or dialogue with the schools. It's not. It's for, he's moving his tenants around. Krempels is out there,
Yeah.
Seacoast Community School, but we literally will have locks on the doors. Elio is the custodian and facility manager in that building, and he'll have a master key, but the whole idea is that this will be a school like all of our other schools. It'll just sit downstairs within community campus. We'll have a separate entrance. Folks won't enter upstairs through the rec's entrance to come down, because that back door will be locked and inaccessible. So I don't want anyone to think that there's additional dollars that somehow we haven't talked about, because none of that is coming to the benefit of the
I
program.
guess my understanding though was that the whole idea of the community campus was that like our kids are going to be using a lot of those spaces. So I think that we stand to sort of directly benefit, but I also don't I don't think that we should be saying like we're completely separate. Like I think if there is a way to sort of, you know, utilize some of their IT infrastructure or, you know, collaborate in some ways to bring the cost down, I would think that there would be some benefit there. So I'm just wondering, I guess, you know, and I was going to bring it up later, like, what is the communication going forward? I know there's this idea of keeping everything separate, but I almost wonder if there would be a way to sort of actually collaborate to bring costs down, and utilize some of these, you know, government grants and whatnot towards.
It
some of
would be
the
a
schools
pleasure to
out
talk to Mr. Henley about sharing that $1 million. I'll let you know that. A member of the rec board thought that was a good idea. We'll see what we can do with that tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I haven't met with him yet. This was just an email, so
Oh.
it wasn't part of our meeting. So we'll
My
see.
pleasure.
I'll talk for some.
Okay, any other questions regarding the financial report that Nathan has been giving? Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's move on.
You.
Next item on the agenda, proposed budget summary. I
Oh.
think you did that for us, Nathan.
Yeah, so that's
That's-
simply the key documents that
Yes,
you had
thank
been
you.
looking through.
Yes.
I cleaned them up. I tried to draw attention to the best parts of them. And I will tell you that that's the same information that we shared with the city managers and city finance office as we did the handoff of your proposed budget to them.
Okay.
And I can say, so we've
Yeah.
had that initial conversation, well, we've had that conversation. We had 2 rounds of dialogue with the city manager's office. You know, maybe would have helped if Nathan already had a job. I don't know, but so what I can tell you though is if you think about page 3 of the proposal document, which is it starts at the top, the subtitle proposed budget FY25 changes. So if you think about this as our prioritized list of items that we added towards the tail end of our budget process, then in turn went to the manager. So at this point, what the manager is committed to in terms of inclusion in her proposal is the 27, the modular classroom piece, and 28, the school psychologist piece. That those things will appear in her proposal. The other ones will not appear in the city manager's proposal. Now, in terms of putting that into some type of kind of reference, kind of thought process, the goal, I believe, and I don't think I'm stealing any thunder from anybody. I mean, the goal from the council, it's been a 4.5% increase across the board on all city finances. Most departments are falling inside of that 4.5%. Our proposal would have us at, I think it's 5.57%. So we are, while it's not the full list in terms of what she's going to be presenting, we are above where want to say maybe any other, no, maybe there's one
Fire.
department, fire.
Yeah, fire.
Outside of fire, we will be the department with the next biggest percentage increase. And we're a much bigger operation than fire as well. So, so as you try to gauge to what extent are your efforts and our efforts as a department being treated fairly or unfairly in terms of what the city manager thinking about her budget, just those are some things in terms of putting in context. We still have a process to go through with the city council itself. There'll be question and answer sessions for all departments as we go through things. So there's still process to be had.
So we will fight for these positions that Karen is not putting in her budget, correct? She's only putting in the first two. So we're gonna have to fight for the additional ones that we have.
We will be advocating for the proposal that you provided us. Yes.
And it will be very interesting to see how I look on both sides of that seat. I'm sitting in two seats at once.
Fix it, Nathan.
Yeah.
I think we're still June.
I essentially was gonna ask to confirm the same thing you did, Nancy, but my question is, where does that happen? And when is your opportunity to do that? If
I can
you're
tell.
not proposing.
And
So
not-
do you have dates? Yeah. so
I just got dates of meetings I should be
there you
prepared.
go.
the
There you go.
manager
It looks to me like
cutting her proposal to
the budget conversation will begin on May 6th in earnest with the council. And on May 13th, we have that day
All
long,
day.
that all day, that's Monday, I think, the 13th. When we will potentially be at the library and go all day, department after department after department. And then there'll be additional review a week later on the 20th. So consider, looks like every Monday in May 6th, 13, 20, and then in June, the 3rd, and then maybe the 17th for final decision making on the budget.
So you will have the opportunity to bring those specific items to the council.
Yes.
And you
Yep.
will, yes,
Yep.
okay. Great, thank you.
Tish, Kerry, Liz.
So as we're looking at this, the modular classrooms,
Yes.
now, I know that you opened up the kindergarten registration.
Yes.
We've been getting a lot.
So,
Yeah.
and I think this is really important, anything folks can do, so we're gonna do some additional outreach, because we're trying to have kindergarten registration done by the 12th. Which
Twelfth
becomes,
of-
right,
Twelfth of what?
April.
April.
So we're trying to, we want those numbers in, because then we have some really important decisions to make, including, are we doing modular classroom?
Right, because that changes
know.
this discussion a little bit if we don't need those.
Yep.
Modular, I mean, that frees up $92,000.
So, and as of this morning, which I might, we're trying to gauge, because I think we had. See if I can, but anyways, it's sub 20 at
Okay.
most buildings right now in terms of our total, the number of enrollments we've had. So you put that in the context of what, where we had like 40 at Bandera last year. So we're like, the description I use with elementary principals I went around today is like, what else can we be doing to squeeze the juice out of the orange to get every possible, as much as we can? There'll be people who move in during the summer,
Yeah.
but we can't, I don't want to whiff on, there are people here who we are just not reaching, or they are just not reaching out to us yet.
Just so you know,
So-
I forward that post whenever it comes on Facebook. I forward it to get
Keep
people to
forwarding it. So- And
register.
we've talked about some other,
Thank you, Tish.
going back around to reconnecting again with pre-Ks that are in and around our community. We're talking today about a push out the newspaper and do a ad in the paper. We're trying to figure out what other channels, because I really want, I mean, if we can, I want that number to be, I want us to feel good based on trending data, that we feel like the number is about 90% of what it's gonna be. Because then I think we do have important decisions to make. It includes, to portable or not to portable. It includes, if those portables are happening, the shifting of some staff in order to man those things. So there are some really important questions that are dependent upon this, getting people to enroll and not waiting until July. But this is also earlier this year purposefully. than we've done in the past. So that was definitely a topic of conversation. I was with all 3 elementary school principals today. And that was one of the things, what else can we do? Because I'm not confident at 19, 18 and 20 or something, that's where we're gonna end up. And most of those enrollments happened, our initial push happened like in the first couple of days.
Statistically, that doesn't make sense compared to like last year.
I mean, if that's the case, then we're in great shape and we don't have to worry about it, but if, depending on where we fall, let's say at New Franklin, where I think we are at 20 as of this morning, if we get into the mid-30s, then we start talking about changing the number of sections we have in kindergarten, right? And then there's a domino effect to the rest of how we're setting up the school and how many sections are available for other stuff. So, and that's happening in all the other buildings at the same time. So that was a dialogue today, and I think we're all feeling a sense of urgency about like, we really want to make sure that we hit all the folks who need to enroll, or a very high percentage of those folks, because we'd hate to make decisions based on lousy data and then have it blow up in their face in August. So.
Okay, thank you.
I think we had Carrie, Pip, and Byron, and Liz. Okay.
I thank you for this. Just to follow up on that, I would say, there are Seacoast pages around birth years of kids that I'm not on, but we can try to find folks that are on them.
Great.
And then the other thing I would just say is the pre-K outreach needs to be much wider than Portsmouth. Because I think it goes from York to Hampton to just with the childcare needs. And then related to kind of advocating for this, although there are those meetings, I just want to make sure I'm on the right page, but we had talked at our prior meetings about connecting with city councilors on this budget. And then this was a request for that. So that is still okay thank you.
I think it would be very helpful if we reached out as school board members to individual city council members and just go through this and tell them why we want 6.5.
To that end, may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Let me do one more document for you, which
Okay.
is a single page that lists the things that are not in today's city manager's budget that were in this budget. So this is how you ended. And I can extract from all of that a list of just what is now missing, so that you could be really focusing on, these are the things.
Can you get that to us by our next meeting?
Oh, set.
I think
Most certainly.
just I think sooner. But I mean, I think that can be part of the introduction of like, these are the, I don't know, I guess I wouldn't.
The
just the
council won't see the budget book until the end of April, 1st of May,
Okay.
so
We have a little time.
you have time, I can get you that so that you'll have it.
Okay, thank you.
But in that reception that Brian and I went to, that the chamber sponsored a few weeks ago, we talked to several of the city councils and they seem like they're undecided. Did you get that impression about supporting the school
one
budget?
One was very decided.
Right. Yeah,
About
in our
not
favor,
supporting?
in
Oh.
our favor, yeah. So I think they're on the fence. So that's why it would be helpful if we could make some kind of contact, if you're comfortable with it,
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
if you're comfortable with it. I don't want anybody to do what they're not comfortable with. Okay, who was next? Pip?
I
And then
think
Byron and
I
then
already got
Liz.
to ask my questions, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, Byron.
Oh, I had a, yeah, okay, so the one pager that you're talking about, Nathan, and this 3-pager here, are the red items like 17, 18, 20, are those the changes from ESSER? What I'm trying to get at is like, do we have like listed out the positions that we're ostensibly cutting because they're being lost from ESSER? And like, and if not, like for that one pager, like having that
Yeah.
context as well is helpful,
as
right?
well.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're on the page, you're looking at 13 to 23.
yeah,
13 to 23 was our,
That was our in-house.
in-house.
shuffling.
Okay,
in-house shuffle.
yeah,
So it's like, how are we gonna find our
that's what,
road?
okay, that's
so
what,
there,
yeah,
all of those
You know.
changes are still in there.
Yeah.
Right now.
So we already did some slicing and dicing in-house in
Yeah.
order to make this work.
yeah, so I think having this extra information whenever we're talking to council, it's gonna be important
It's
because
important.
that's, yeah. There's that. And then on this conversation has gone a few different directions. Back to the kindergarten registration question, April 12th, you said you wanted to wrap it up. What, when you say you want to wrap it up by April 12th, like what, do you have any kind of authority to say that's like, this is over in April 12th and like, it's good, like.
The challenge.
The
The challenge, right? To say like,
Yeah.
like, we cannot say the inn is closed on
Yeah.
April 13th.
Right.
So I think that's the challenge. And one of the things we've talked about
Just the communication and
is yeah, we gotta, and in addition to the communication too, in the long run, I think one of the things that can work sometimes is that you create opportunities for families connected with kindergarten registration. So you do a bunch of screenings that are connected with kids. You identify, you go through a process that's ultimately gonna lead to what classes and teachers kids are gonna be. You create value for parents to be
Mhm.
present and enrolled early. But I think we've got some additional work. We've done some stuff. We have some additional work to do in that regard. And this has been like I said, it has been a later process. I think traditionally in the district. So we want to do things that create incentive because we don't have the punitive lever to force action.
Yeah. Okay,
So-
so I'm gonna keep going on that a little bit. From what Carrie said, I gather that there is pre-K outreach to the various like preschools.
Yeah.
So that's all going, so that's good. That seems, okay. I need to ask that question. And then, what's my train of thought on that one? Yeah, there were so many things.
We can come back.
Yeah, come back. Thank you.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
Brian, Byron.
Hi.
Liz?
I have a couple questions. I guess, just rolling off of this for, the kindergarten piece. Their concern, if you are sort of pushing this to advance to try to get an understanding that, some of these assessments may be happening too early. Where they traditionally held closer to the school year so that the school could figure out better placement for kids and, where they're learning at. I mean, obviously their little brains are growing probably pretty quickly over the course of 4 months or so there, where there's a gap in time between their school, it's almost 5 months. So the enrollment by April 12th, are you doing the screenings at that point? The screenings are happening closer to
So
the school year.
that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Now let you talk more. Do you want to talk more about what's actually happening?
It's just that it's gonna be happening later. The push to get the enrollment registration out early is to see what the size is going to be so that we're not caught off guard like we were this past year where the numbers were not what we were expecting and numbers kept swelling as we were getting closer and closer. Assessments and kindergarten screening is what we call it, is going to be on a relatively similar time frame.
Okay.
So to go back to what I was trying to say to Byron, a thing though, that back in Homer Simpson spring utilized was we tried to create, because there wasn't this like scary incentive of if I don't enroll, that wasn't present. So it was, what are we doing to create a sense of value for early enrollment and importance. And it wasn't just to trick people into enrolling early. It also was, so we had all that data really early, so we could do a whole bunch of stuff in preparation.
Swag bags.
For kids. Yeah, well, we didn't have the budget for swag bags. But it was so it wasn't just to try to suck people in early.
Yeah.
It also was, so we had the information earlier. We could do a bunch of stuff with that was going to be.
Or, but also, I guess all joking aside of the swag bag, but you could give them information like, how can you help your kid to, best
Right.
prepare for, over the summer, library programs sort of thing. Okay, so, and then I guess, but my concern though is that I think there was probably a swell last year and created concern, but there's also this swell at Dondero within the 4th grade class. And then I guess I wonder, has enrollment, I know, kids get added to classrooms over time, switch districts, foster families, all these different things. Have we seen a swell in other grades? And so, because I guess my understanding with these modules was not, I guess I never understood the modules to be just for kindergarten. I guess my understanding for the modules was the fact that we had this swell in these 4th graders that are then going to become 5th graders, and we just have a general swell and like building space and whatnot. So I don't know what the committee has worked on exactly, but I guess I would hesitate to to associate the modules just with kindergarten.
And they're not just
Okay.
kindergarten. So there's two classes that felt the pressure. Originally, there was a conversation coming in the spring. Well, we had a certain number of sections, the group that is now the fourth grade class. We had a certain number of sections, and I can't remember if it was, we had 4, and then we were gonna move to 3 because we started to see this swell that was happening in kindergarten. It was like, okay, we're gonna reallocate what used to be, and people were used to, I can't remember, it was like 16 kids a class or something like that, because we had 4 teachers in the fourth grade. But then we saw the beginning of this swell at the kindergarten, and we wanted to shift one of those teachers down to the kindergarten to help, because we felt as kids get older, we should be able to do a better job with bigger class sizes as kids get older. But like kindergarten is so essential, we want to make sure we nail kindergarten. So even though we did that, after we did that, and there was consternation amongst fourth grade parents, it still ended up that even the shift that we made didn't cover the swelling that went beyond what was already happening. And the summer was, me getting text messages from Kate Callahan being like, we just got 2 more today. Hey, Zach, 2 more, and that was the conversation that kept flowing into particularly kindergarten. So what we ended up with was what ended up being, after we made class assignments, a swollen kindergarten and a swollen fourth grade. So the modulars, portables, they're really just creating the ability for us to have up to 2 additional classrooms online, with the possibility of then transferring staff within the district and then having more classrooms. And then we could reallocate classrooms based on how many kids we have. That's when kindergarten becomes crucial, because it's the kindergarten group that comes in at Dondero. If we discover that it's on par with not last year, but other years where it could be 25, 30 kids as opposed to 42, well, then we might be in great shape for kindergarten, and we might not need portables, and we might be able to reallocate the existing staff we have.
You're
and
still gonna,
drop the fourth graders. But I mean, when the fourth graders move to 5th, we might be able to drop them down to like 16 kids again, or 17 kids. So kindergarten becomes crucial though, because then we'll know how much we have to allocate. We also have only so many classrooms. So if the number is high in kindergarten and we need more people in order to drop the levels, we're going to have to do the portables.
you still have this swell that's gonna continue to move with the grades, so that's, I
Yep.
mean, that's the other thing, you're going 3 to 4 to, sort of in these grades, and
Yep.
so I guess I also wonder, is there any conversations that could happen sooner, with these higher grades, like, I think there was, you bring a good point that the issue with the fourth grade happened because of this kindergarten swell, but is there any sort of conversations or anything that could happen now as far as the shift up, or can you not have anything until you
I mean, we're
understand?
talking today. So Kate and I were talking today about what the kindergarten enrollment look like so far. And depending on where that kindergarten enrollment came, what would that mean for next year's 5th graders? And it was really dependent. And so there's those 2 groups, depending on what happens with kindergarten, we can reallocate existing people without doing movement and modulars. If the kindergarten is bigger, then we're going to have to look at modulars and then reallocation of folks from outside of Dondero to create additional staffing. And then that, depending on how those numbers all work out, the goal is to have both those groups have smaller class sizes next year. But
I mean, is there any way to?
very,
Is there any way to like do a districting instead of saying redistrict for the whole, everybody's redistricting, just focus on kindergarten and incoming people, and if there's kindergarten kids that toe the line of where the buses go, shift them over to, start their education at Little Harbor or New Franklin.
right now, I think the challenge is transportation. And there's because there's been some conversation about, well, if kids come in late and parents are willing to drive them, then can kids go to the school where we have less people? And the challenge in that has been, well, it creates an equity issue. So if your parent doesn't have to go to work, or your parent has a car or doesn't have a car, then you get to choose to go to a different school. But if you don't, then you don't. And so we've been trying to avoid, that in terms of where people might be on a bus route too. We have really passionate, I mean, I've got passionate people who are lobbying me because for a variety of different reasons why they don't want their kid to go to the school that they in the district they live in within Portsmouth. They want to go to a different school. There's a bunch of different reasons why people articulate why they would like things to be different. Right now, we would really struggle if it was, hey, you happen to be close to the line, the bus swings through. I mean, even the bus routes, anything, maybe it's late in the season that we're really coming up those bus. I think it's there's challenges in it,
Yeah.
just in terms of pulling it all together and being able to clearly articulate to people why they would go to some different school and somebody else gets to go to it and they don't. And be able for us to be able to carry out all the logistics.
All right, so I think we nailed on the modular issue.
Okay,
I just
let's
want to be
move
clear though,
on. Let's
yes,
move
can we
on.
just be
Make
clear
it
though
quick,
that
please.
29 through 33 is what is being nixed right now, or what by the,
29 through 33 are things that will
No
not
longer.
be, are not
Okay,
That's
currently.
already
clear on
been
that.
stated.
Going to-
no, I know, but I
Stated
just wanted
by
to be
Zach.
clear.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's move on. Byron, did you have another question?
I'm sorry, yeah, I remember, but and I apologize to,
No, don't worry. about it.
just the 92,000 for the modular. If that were not to be needed, is it necessarily implied that that would go back into other positions?
That we don't have a commitment to that as a concept. We didn't push for that, though, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Because based on what we went through last year, I don't know, I think it's more likely than not we end up with the modulars, but we'll see. I mean, it all depends, because this number, like I said, the number.
Yeah, I would just hate to get to a position where that just goes away.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. So I think that at this point, we made cases around each of these different things. And we did talk about the fact that we saw it as a prioritized list.
okay,
There's not necessarily a commitment. I think the city manager is very interested in addition to what we might be interested in terms of reallocating $90,000. City manager is really interested in making sure she hits what the city council's asked her to do, which is 4.5%. So my fairest thing is say we have no commitment that if we didn't need it, that it's an automatic reallocation and the bottom line stays the same.
yeah, I just wanted to chat, I mean, like, Tisha made that point, and I just wanted to sort of put it out there that that's not necessarily like how that would go down.
Yeah, we don't, like you said, I think it is possible that depending on how the process worked out in the city, that they might. I think it's very possible once you get into a conversation, let me talk about how this works, right? And you've been doing this
Yeah.
here longer than me, but I just know how this works when you're trying to deal with the tension of services versus taxpayers. When you're
Right.
late in a process and somebody says, we no longer need X, that is very often something that ends up in the cutting room floor and it doesn't get reallocated somewhere else.
Yep.
So,
And to the extent that there have been sacrifices made across the city, when we are having a conversation with counselors about the priorities that aren't represented in the current proposal in May, heading into June, when the conversation is had, because we have to know by May 1, really, whether we're modularing or not. Because otherwise we're gonna lose the modular that has our name on it right now. So there's some pressure on us to make this decision in a timely manner. If that comes out, yeah, there may be other priorities that the council wants to put back on the list that they could use that for. So that'll be part of the argument you want to make.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. Oh, are you all set?
Yeah, I was just
You were just saying thank you.
gratitude to our dear friend.
All right, we will move on to a very important part of our meeting, and that's our student representative report. Nathan Delaney.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, so it's been a while since I've given this report. I think it was December that I gave my first. And since then there's been a lot of digging into what this should be, what it needs to be, right? Regurgitating the weekly announcements for 20 minutes isn't a good use of our time here, nor is it beneficial to the district. So what this
But I said it quiet enough.
yeah, so so this goes through the elementary schools, the middle school, the high school, Robert J. Lister Academy, the student senate, and then the principal's report. Obviously, I'm not going to read through it all, but one thing that I will touch on is that what I'm trying to do right now is in the form of right now being a Google form and sending it out to some kids at the high school, possibly eighth graders at the middle school. And just to see what their feedback is. And I will obviously warn you, and you probably anticipate this, it's not all gonna be positive, right? I can 99 out of 100 people at the high school will probably tell you that there's 5 things going wrong that they would fix. And right now, obviously, I listed a few of them here: bathroom misuse and abuse, appropriate use of lunch areas, and cell phones are all things that we are trying to get over that hump through the principal's consultancy protocol that we're trying to put into place at the high school. And just a little brief overview of that. It's more of just a protocol that we can, you read this blurb here, that allows the school to change, add, or accomplish things in a unified manner. And it starts to the students, and then it goes up through that ladder. And it's going to be very beneficial for schools. So other than that, I don't have a lot.
So these issues that you're outlining are being discussed by the students, the
Yes.
faculty, the
Yes.
principal, so all those issues.
I
are-
don't know the number, but there was one point where students didn't have a bathroom on the second floor or boys on the second floor. Sorry, not girls, boys. So they would have to go to the third. And that obviously is a very big problem. You wouldn't expect that in high school, right? So we're trying to figure that out. But
Liz,
I just have a brief question. And maybe just a funny anecdote. So, the 5th graders of all the elementary schools are going over to the high school. And so every time I pick up my son, he always talks about the bathrooms by the band area. And he just attributes it to the being smelly high schoolers. But I guess I just wonder if that's part of the abuse that's happening, or if there's a sewage issue or something else going on, because it seems to be so.
Oh,
You go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Well,
Go.
Expert.
I mean, I've been there for 2 years, and that bathroom specifically always has been a little off. But I would say that that's more just
the clean.
yeah,
keep it
yeah,
clean.
and it is clean. It just has a little bit of a smell to it. But great.
It's probably the same bathroom that was there when I was there and my mom was there too. But I think I can picture where it is, but I don't know. So I mean, something to be said, Zach, I guess that's what continues to come up for these 5th graders that are going over to the high school. So I don't know. And there are another sewage issues in that area, on Lafayette, like where Margaritas is, that whole area has had sewage issues. So I guess I was seriously concerned of whether that sewage issues, went over to the high school too.
So I'm not aware of a kind of broader systematic sewer issue. I mean, I can tell you that the bathrooms have been a problem this year.
Yes.
We've had we've had stuff getting flushed down toilets that should not be flushed down toilets. There's been purposeful destruction
Okay.
in some bathrooms. And so, I don't know to what extent on the particular time when your son was there, some of that was there and some of it's pre-existing, like
Yes.
it got a little thing going on. But it has been an issue. It's been a real frustration for high school administration. It's been a real frustration for Mr. Lynchy and his crew in terms of definitely have been days where Kenny's like, I gotta head over to the high school because we've got 4 clogged toilets and whatever, and they were purposely done. So the high school has been working through, high school administration has been working with staff around not just around, well, 2 concerns around bathrooms. One is around the destruction piece and the other is around potential, vaping and things of that nature. So high school administration's been working hard with staff around becoming, it's uncomfortable for staff to become more present in bathrooms around the building so that we're in a position where we don't need to shut down those bathrooms. And so that's been, I don't know to what extent you've noticed teachers showing up in the bathroom more often,
Yeah,
but that's a thing. that they're
definitely. And
actively
during
trying to do.
passing time, there's a lot
Yeah.
more teacher presence. And I think that that's the most appropriate and sort of the only improvement that could be made to that. Because it's very immature, and you wouldn't expect it in high school, you wouldn't expect it in middle school, you wouldn't expect it at all,
Yeah, right.
So it definitely is a very big problem. I have seen improvements, the school has seen improvements in it. But yes, that I think we've touched on.
Brian.
Just a quick question, because I wasn't sure I understood one piece. By the way, it's great to have your voice heard here. I loved reading your report. It's super helpful to see what you see. What's the appropriate use of lunch areas? What is that?
So yeah, I touch on that too a little bit. It's more that I don't know if it's in the student handbook or a policy or something, but students aren't allowed to eat lunch in the halls, but there's still students eating lunch in the halls. And that was just more of what are we supposed to do with that? Are we supposed to tell students to get in the classroom, which is that's our stance right now? Or should it be, I mean, I guess, sure, you can sit in the hall, but right now you need to get in the classroom, you need to get into the lunchroom. But students aren't supposed to be eating lunch in the halls. That was the
Got it.
little thing there.
And we're still on one singular lunch. at the high
Yes,
school too. And this is
one
di-
big lunch.
This is a conversation that's ongoing too. So there's things that people like about that, but there's also challenges. At a high school of our size, it'd be pretty common for there to be multiple lunches where we're rotating kids in and out. I think there was, I don't know the full history. I just know that there's the one lunch thing has been a thing for a while. There are some definite logistical issues with one lunch, but there's some people who feel like there's some benefits to it as well. But that was something that the current administration inherited when they came in, and are still kind of working through conversations about whether or not they feel like that's the best course of action.
So, oh, sorry.
Trish, Pip, Liz.
So is it because the lunchroom is crowded that kids are?
I would assume so. I'm not sure the numbers, but I don't even think half the school can fit into the lunchroom. So there obviously is, there's some students who choose to eat lunch in teachers' classrooms, but there's also that vast majority who, if you don't get a table first day of school, you have to go somewhere else.
Right.
And that could be the hall, that could be a teacher's room. But we're just trying to figure out what to do with those students, because it is a school rule that you aren't allowed to eat in the halls during lunch. So.
But the cafeteria does not fit the whole school.
No,
I-
not.
No, I
like
was
to
one
do
of
that.
those three. We had three different lunch shifts when I went, but Pease was open at the time then
Oh,
too,
well, that
so
needed-
I'm dating myself.
I would just throw out there, it comes a lot closer to sitting everybody than you think. But remember, we have an open campus located in the center of a city. And so you wouldn't want to be guilty, for instance, of growing it to make sure that every kid had a seat in every moment, because a quarter of them leave at lunch because they can. I mean, it's a senior privilege that starts when in the year, I don't know, and then juniors gain that privilege at some point as well. I don't know if.
I believe it's
sophomores and freshmen-
after progress reports.
So this, you have to attain, but
Yeah.
But that's one of the dynamics that the program and the space
Okay.
has as another challenge, is that there will always be, under the current structure, there will always be a huge chunk of the population that that beats feet at lunch to go take advantage of other things in town, including home. And that's to the dismay of the lunch program, because if you take like an Exeter High School out in the middle of nowhere, almost none of those kids leave at lunch, and as a result, they have a flourishing a la carte program. They can do things because they have more business being transacted, and so it's a balancing act here. But the one lunch has always been, it's been a challenge for lots of reasons.
Who else? Pip, and then Liz.
I wanted to go back to the bathroom thing for a moment and just go on record saying that I get when we have a sewer issue or the toilets have been clogged, but I really think it's an inappropriate method of controlling substance use in the bathroom to close the bathrooms. And I just, that's not acceptable health-wise for the kids. We've been trying to get my son to drink more water and he won't, because he doesn't have time to go to the bathroom during his
Yeah.
classes. So that's not okay. Like, that's just simply unacceptable. So I hope that we can deal with that in a way that doesn't require closing bathrooms that kids need access to. And then I just also wanted to add that there was a great conversation during the PHS PAC meeting about cell phone usage, and they're looking for more input from parents on the developing rules that they're working to come up with right now. So if parents want to have some say in how those rules get made, they should. There's a survey. I'm not sure the best way to get it. Zach, do you know?
I don't.
Principal Kenosi was sending it out to those of us on the call, but I don't know how he was going to disseminate it otherwise.
I mean, and part of that, the work that was being done at the PAC was same stuff we were working at on that Saturday.
Yeah.
You guys are going through the protocol, but some staff had previously gone through it, the same work. But I don't know exactly what the the dissemination approach. Steve and I talked about it, about the work pack, but I don't know exactly how he's planning to do the dissemination on the parent side.
All right, well, I assume, he did send us the example of what the current rules are looking like, or the draft anyway, and
Yeah.
then a survey to ask for feedback. So I assume if people contact him, they can get the survey.
And I would, yeah, and I don't know, yes, I think that's, yes, they can do that, and then I don't know, I'm guessing there would be some additional push out based on the conversation you had back.
I would hope so, because it was, I mean, I'm sure people have opinions on it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Liz and then we have Lisa.
So I'm a little bit younger than Tish, and so in my generation, before they did all the new additions, including the upgrades to the cafeteria, we weren't required to eat in the cafeteria. So shockingly, based on my personality, I actually never ate in the cafeteria. So there was an outside area where the parking lot was, flagpole, we could all eat outside. We'd eat in the band, hallway. We'd, I hung out with band geeks, but I used to make my rounds. I used to, end up seeing everybody, but we'd all eat in the hallway. We'd eat in the stairwells. And then we'd obviously leave campus, halfway through junior year and senior year. Obviously it creates the issues on the trail to going over to, what was Ledgewood, I think is now Winchester Place, maybe, I forget what it's called. But, so it's interesting because, I mean, they developed that, and upgraded the cafeteria and the idea that everybody had to go sit in the cafeteria in my generation, essentially. Sorry we ruined it for everybody else. But I mean, I think, I don't know. There was something to be said to, it was like the Breakfast Club. It was kind of like, you had your band friends, you had the arts kids in the arts space eating in the hallway. I mean, I guess it's kind of gross to think that you're sitting on the ground eating food. And, obviously can create messes, but I don't know, something about it might have worked back then. It might be, interesting to talk to Bob Lister about it. Or, somebody that was sort of in that generation, and overseeing that. But I think in other schools, I went to a high school in North Carolina, having the multiple lunches, may remedy the situation. So thank you. Thank you for bringing this report to our attention. And I think it's good to hear what these issues are so that we can have conversations about them too and understand. And maybe like spread the word, like, what are your kids doing at the high school if they're flushing stuff down the toilet, But maybe that trend is gone. Wasn't that like a fad or something online at
There
one point?
was a bad couple of years ago where people were doing Wordo
But no,
stuff.
it's-
This is not connected to any type of TikTok or any other type of thing. This is the us thing and not a national novel.
Poor choice. Okay, thank you, Liz. Let's go to Lisa.
Hey, Nancy, thank you. So I think Pip said both of the things I was gonna say, but I would definitely say my 10th grader has complained of being unable to find open bathrooms pretty routinely at the high school. So I hope that there's some urgency to addressing that. And the PHS PAC, the Parents Advisory Council, has been emailing out to their membership a link to the meeting where Principal Kenosi talked through the draft policy on cell phones with parents, so that people who didn't attend that meeting can see the video and fill out the survey. And one thing that I just would put out there for sort of a future communication question to think about is whether there's just better ways to get that out to a broader audience than just through the limited subset of people who know to subscribe to an email listserv from the PTA, because they don't have access to the whole school to send out messages the way that Parent Square is set up. So I think it's being worked on, but it would be a nice thing to get those surveys out to more people.
Lisa, Byron.
Yeah, Nathan, this is great. I enjoyed reading it. I had one question around the consultancy protocol. Is this something that is established now, or you guys are working on?
I think Mr. Kenosi said that we're trying to work on it. We're trying to figure out how we can bridge all of these things together, like student government, the parental
So
advisory.
this is like an aspirational sort of.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
And then I like the idea about the surveys you're sending out. Just as a potential recommendation or suggestion, using something like CSAT or NPS or some sort of baseline metric to establish sort of like what the current like satisfaction is. You know, ultimately, like the student body is likely to be cynical with the youths and whatnot, but you can at least establish a baseline and see if you can move that, you know, with changes. Yeah.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, are we finished with, oh, Zach?
Say the last thing, you know, I appreciate how Nathan's been really grappling with how does he authentically represent the student body and all students in the district. So, you know, so I appreciate, and I think is trying to figure out how to do that in a way that doesn't become a full-time job.
Yeah.
So, so I just appreciate how committed he is to trying to inform you and really committed to speaking for all students and feeling like a deep sense of responsibility for that, is really neat to see. And at the same time, you know, we may have talked about like, dude, you gotta give yourself a break. And there's a certain, and, you know, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to submit a 35-page report and, you know, and I think tonight's a great example of that because you can hear the value people get in the game. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Nathan. Great job. And when you're ready to do it again, just let us know. And
Yeah.
We kind of want to work around your schedule too, so.
We do,
let us
definitely.
know.
do,
Yes.
Nancy, I think that's the Nathan you need to ride to the governorship right there.
Yeah, right.
Wasn't tall. Crazy tall. What I wouldn't give to be tall.
Okay.
Have you considered being a school business administrator? There's an opening coming.
Crossed my mind once or twice.
Okay, let's move on. Thank you, everyone. Consideration and approval of the 24-25 school board meetings. Do we need a vote?
Motion to approve?
Okay, do we have a
Includes
second?
all
Thank
the-
you.
Nope.
Second, Tish. Okay, all those in favor?
Hold
And-
on,
oh, any
roll call.
discussion? Any discussion?
Includes all the elements from before that we talked about, adds the July meeting, removes the second meeting in November, adds the second meeting in April, and adds the tagline about budget meetings.
Yes. Thank you, Zach, for all that. Okay, yes, Pip.
I don't know if I'm alone in this, I may be, but, and this is very tangential to the actual vote, but, I'm wondering if when we list these online, if we could list the year next to them. Because I often find that when we're getting close to the transition from one year to the next, it's like a little bit confusing to know if you're looking at the right June meeting or July meeting.
Do we make that adjustment?
Since she started the suggestions, could the tagline about meeting every week be every Tuesday? Or tentatively every Tuesday? That has traditionally been what we do. Or
Every
on-
week during the months of January and February, typically Tuesday, just at.
Okay.
All right, with those revisions, can we take a vote? Roll call, please.
Liz Barrett. Pip Blues.
Yes.
Fish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
And Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We will move on to Pip now with the policy.
All right, thank you. Looks like right now we just have the two policies that are back for a second reading. And these were discussed at our last board meeting. So, I guess at this point, I just entertain any questions on either one of them. Or I guess let's start with the.
Do we have a motion to approve EHAB for the second reading? Brian, second? Lee? Okay, go ahead. Oh, who wanted to? Kerry, did you want to make a comment?
No, it was a motion. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't worry. I zoned out.
Any discussion? Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Blues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, Pip?
Okay, and then the next one is the use of restraints and seclusion, which again was discussed at the last meeting and I don't, Nancy, do you want me to call for a motion or?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
All right,
you
I would
do that
entertain in
since you're
motion
charge.
to approve this one on second reading.
So.
Second.
Jinx.
That's right.
You got
I
it.
gave it to Brian because I started writing his name first.
I was gonna say do rock, paper, scissors.
All right, is there any discussion
I
on it?
know we had discussion before in, just in summary, I don't think that there were any changes, correct?
No, I
in
don't, I don't believe there were.
It was, okay,
two.
thank you.
And actually, I had to step away during the conversation of this one, so Zach, I don't know if you remember, but in the minutes, there were no changes noted.
I know, that's correct. We're no
It's
change.
just discussion. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Um,
Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess we need a roll call vote. on
Okay,
that.
Liz Barrett,
Okay.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
and Byron Maddow.
Yep.
Passes.
So
Okay. Thank you, Pip. And when is our next meeting?
Policy meeting?
8th of April, I believe.
Eighth of April.
Yeah.
Okay, just gonna make sure I have that. Let me write it down and then I'll look later. Okay, April 8th.
I'll be at.
Actually, it's
Wait, no, it's the 12th. isn't it?
No, it didn't.
the
Can
ninth.
you move it?
Yes, three possibilities.
Please.
Could be the 8th, the 9th, or the 12th.
It's Tuesday the ninth.
I thought,
Sorry
we
about
decided I thought we decided to keep it on Student Government Day, which is the 12th
Yes,
at 10 a.m.
I still have it on the
That's
top.
what I have too.
I think you're thinking of May. Yeah, May the 8th.
Oh, that was the other one we moved. Thank you.
May
Sorry.
the- Okay, April 12th and May the 8th.
Yeah, and actually, when we give committee reports, I'll say a few more things about that.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Pip. We will move on to the lead update memo. Did you want to?
So you have a memo from Ken Lynchy. This is, I'll just say that Ken and I went to the Portsmouth Safe Water Advisory Group, SWAG, on Thursday night. Liz was there representing the board as part of that. The only other adjustments I'd say in here are just to, to make sure that you understand the things that came up in our August readings as having some levels over 5, or none of them are in use right now. They've all been mitigated with some type of filtration at the source. I will also say at SWAG that we discussed the fact that some folks were asking us about whether or not we felt filtration was the long-term fix, and we indicated that no, the filtration was something that was going to work for the intermediate period, but ultimately, we believe that we're going to need to get into that infrastructure in order to switch out the lines within the building. We also know that, the readings that we get, the city does extensive measurement of their own systems. And so, the levels that we're seeing are not levels that they're seeing in their testing inside of the city water supply. So anyway, so we are switching out all that stuff. We will be doing what will be the thing about this under the law. I think we talked about this before, that we had an initial set of testing that we did in 2019, and then the law expected that there would be 2 more rounds of testing within a certain period of time. That first one that we did was in August, and we had some concerns about the methodology we used in August. We'll call it 2B in December, and we retested all the stuff from August. There were some differences in what we saw, but didn't clear up everything. And then we will do in the coming weeks, we have to wait a couple more weeks out to have the 3rd round of testing count towards the statutory requirement. So we're a couple weeks out, and then we'll do the testing again. And at that point, our hope is we're then underneath the state requirements across the board, and that we're all right. We will be mitigating right now the things that have filtration at the source and have the fixtures switched out. We're all at the 5 parts per billion level, which is the new state requirement, or higher on the second reading in August. We will be doing filtration and faucet switch outs on anything that had a readable level from those from that August set of testing. So just a heads up, all those things are in the works. We will also be applying for whatever reimbursement opportunities there are through the Department of Environmental Services. And we think it's promising that a good chunk of what we put in will be reimbursed through them. So we'll see.
Carrie, Liz.
Just a question on timeline. In the memo, you talk about the ones being replaced after essentially the R2. So after August. I guess my question is there was mitigation between the test and the retest, correct?
So we did. Yeah, two different things. So once, so first, August there is a gap through the lab in terms of when we did the testing in August and when we had the results back. And then that's when I had done the announcement to the district where it's like, here's the statistics and here's the things. So then mitigation comes in a bunch of different ways. So one form of mitigation is just like you shut down the bubbler, you put it back, or you have by sinks, you have classroom sinks. You have a sign that says hand wash only, and you tell your teachers to make sure it's only used for hand washing purposes. So that would be included in mitigation. So once we had the original readings, we mitigated those forms. But then before we were gonna start switching out the faucets, what I wanted to see was how much of this is a sampling error. So basically I said, let's do the temporary, shut everything down, but then we need to like the next weekend. Kenny and his crew came in within a very short period of time. Kenny and his crew came in on a Saturday and we retested everything. Then it was like, okay, send it off to the lab. Let's not wait for the lab to give us the results back. Now we know we have like a sample 2 pre-switching out faucets and doing filtration. Go send that to the lab. Let's see what we get back. Now start switching out faucets and start putting in filtration units. So now that's occurred. Now we have to do it. Now we will do what will become 3, if that's 2B in the testing in December. We'll now do a 3rd round, which I don't have, Kenny didn't have a specific date in this. I feel like we're 2.5 to 3 weeks out before we've gone far enough out from our last round of testing that the 3rd round would count. So all that stuff stays like shut down and not usable in the same form, even though we have filtration stuff on it. We'll run another round of tests now post filtration, and then we'll see where we're at that point. And then if those things are at the appropriate levels, then we would at that point allow utilization again for drinking purposes. So yeah, it's been a process.
Liz.
So in that committee meeting, there's a couple things that came up, that I found interesting and I guess, weren't sort of relayed on this report. I think there are more comments, so I guess I was curious as far as follow-up. I think one of the things was talking about costs. Obviously this is not a long-term fix, so what might that look like, for the district, but also, these filtration systems are constantly being replaced to make sure that they have the proper filters, and what type of costs now we're gonna incur because of these mitigation measures as well as fixes long term. So that was sort of something to think about for the board too, that this may be, I don't know what type of cost we'll be looking at in the future, what that might look like. Another thing that came up and somebody had asked, as what communication went to parents about the fact that their children may have been exposed to lead through the drinking water at the schools. And although there was a district-wide statement of this is what our results were, there really wasn't any sort of targeted communication to families about what do you do now? Was your child, it's like, similar, like, we're not talking PFAS at, but PFAS, when that situation happened, there's this, have your child, come part of this program, have your child tested. I mean, obviously there's not these mitigating things, but so I guess, obviously some time has passed and I don't know if this is just a missed point of opportunity for the school or not. I mean, obviously this testing initially happened before kids even went back to school, but what does it mean for the kids that were drinking the water last year? And obviously they talk about, I don't know, lead leaving your system at a certain point. But I guess I wonder, and I just bring it to the board's attention that maybe there needs to be some sort of, and I know maybe Kim McNamara can speak to this, but what is our obligation or responsibility to families to say, hey, you know, not only do we have these results, but your child may have been exposed to lead. I mean, but obviously lead can be in a lot of different things. I mean, it could be, you know, in drinking water anywhere,
Yeah.
you know, but what is our obligation? And maybe this is a legal question too, for,
I think there's a ton of legal components to that
yeah,
question, and I think our initial kind of conversation with some attorneys, you know, I think the problem becomes potentially is isolating where if a student has lead levels, trying to isolate, because there's a lot of different places in which you can be exposed to lead. To what extent would we ever be in a position to be able to isolate that lead was coming from schools and that type of thing? But I think just having conversation, I think one of the things that one of the members of SWAG was pushing, not at this meeting, but at a previous meeting, was about school offering some type of looking at offering some way of paying for testing for anybody who is connected with any space. So I think there's some things to consider there.
yeah. And I,
But I don't have answers to those questions.
but I know like the WIC program, for example, that it's a simple testing, you know, so it's almost something that potentially a nurse or somebody that outside, like the dental person that comes in, could come in and finger prick kids just to test them. I mean, I think we should take this seriously. Another point that actually came across was that within the testing things here, the athletic fields, the water that the children are drinking at the athletic fields or from the hoses to the athletic containers has not been tested, in my understanding, right? So those points
So
of
Council
water
Blaylock
contact.
is there, it's talking about there's a spigot.
Yeah.
That they fill up the stuff from. So the things that were tested were classroom sinks and water drinking outlets, which classroom sinks and water bubblers and kitchen sinks. So anything that's like like we did not test in a mop closet for a custodian or a outdoor spigot that's really
Yeah.
there for the purposes, generally is for the purposes of landscaping type stuff. We did not test those spots.
Yeah, but the concern is that the athletic fields in these games that's what they're using to fill these containers. So I think we need to take that seriously
Yep.
too.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Liz. Carrie?
I just want to respectfully disagree with the screening and the testing piece. So, I mean, essentially the challenge is that there's no treatment. There's no treatment for unless someone has neurologic symptoms, and then they should be going to a provider, and that would be part of the workup. But in general, recent exposure to lead is gone within your blood in 6 weeks and stored in your bones. And so there's no way to test for that. And I think that whenever you think about doing a screening for something, especially in a large group, the amount of anxiety that would provoke and lead to in both parents and kids is actually greater than any potential clinical benefit, because essentially since September, this has been mitigated. So if they had school exposure, you absolutely wouldn't see it on a test. And although there are some other very expensive tests, that screening that's done by WIC, those pieces of those time frames that we talked about before, 18 and 36 months or 9 months and up to 36 months, but they're very specific to the growth and development periods that are there in which it is circulating in the bloodstream, and you see it before bone absorption happens. So that's a lot of my nursey brain, but I think we just have to think about the risks of screening. It's not a comfort to everyone. And I think it would push more fear and needless concern, because there's plenty of things for us to actually be concerned about.
Okay, yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, I think the whole point though is sort of these questions were coming from the SWAG of what has the outreach been, and sort of, and I don't know that we necessarily had an answer, and so I think, maybe this is just a learning point. If something like this were to happen again, maybe we need to, as a board, to sort of figure out, what is, I would think having that information from Carrie and understanding what our possibilities are when something like this happens. But hopefully it would never happen again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Carrie. That was important information. Okay, where are we here?
Nancy, I just one.
Oh, yes,
Baseball
I'm
night.
sorry, Nathan.
Baseball night. I would just touch on one quick thing that Liz said. So in the field house, there is a sink and there's a spigot on the outside, both of which fill up the water jugs that are sent all around the athletic fields. I mean, I would probably say most, if not all, the kids fill up their water bottles with that either before or during games or practices. So I think it would definitely be a priority to test that sink,
Spigot.
not necessarily even the spigot, because I think they're connected, but the sink inside Shamar's office for sure.
Okay, good. Thank you, Nathan. That's helpful. We'll write that down.
I mean, sorry, just to add, I know that there's isn't there a water bubbler outside the middle school at the baseball fields? I don't know if that's technically rec department, but I would assume middle schoolers use that too. There is a water fountain outside there, I believe. It may be upgraded, but I don't know if that was tested. So I think we need to think about some of these other locations where kids that are actually drinking water playing sports would be.
Things at the baseball field across the street.
Not the baseball field, it's like directly, it's directly across.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like it's right behind Central, but I think that's still city stuff.
I mean, but
I'm happy to talk to Mr.
yeah.
Mr. Henley, am I calling tomorrow about his $1 million?
Yeah.
Let him know there's some water work to be done with that.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's move on to new business. Zach, you want to talk about the general assurances?
Sure, I think I kind of laid out what they were in my memo. These are the federal guidelines that we must follow. I have to attest to the fact that we're following these things. It includes things around internal policies and procedures we need to have, making sure we adhere to certain ways in which we purchase services. We have to have certain policies and procedures in place internally, all those sorts of things, in order for us to be eligible for the utilization of those federal funds. And on an annual basis, we primarily through me, and then I need to be able to demonstrate that I'm attesting to the fact that's occurring inside the district and that it's been brought to the board. I have to be able to show a board agenda with the peers, and then I need the certification of the school board chair. So
And
But
do
it's
we
a-
do this every year?
every year.
Every year?
Yeah.
Is that a motion or no?
No, I guess we don't need a motion according to the agenda. Do you want us?
if it appears on the agenda, I mean, as long as you're empowered by the board, you sign off on these documents.
You're the
Mhm.
chair.
Often, and as a chair, you're able to do that. The most important thing for me is to be able to demonstrate that it appeared on your agenda.
Okay,
Should we do, I mean, could we do a motion to authorize Nancy to sign this so that you're not just signing it on your own?
I don't believe it's necessary. It's not
Protect you,
necessary.
I guess, I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to, where are we? Consider-
This one I want to make a motion to approve the leave of absence for Ben Finney.
Okay, do we have a second? Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Liz Barrett. Booth. Campbell. Gary Nolte. Brian French. Nancy Claiborne. Yeah. Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yeah,
Okay,
this
we have
is
to
a
vote on that?
long-term
Okay.
sub replacement,
Oh, I see. Okay.
yeah, at the high school.
Do we have a motion to approve the employment of student support teacher Kubis?
So much.
Thank you, Brian. Second, thank you, Byron. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Blues. Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiborne.
Yeah.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, now we move on to consideration and approval of teacher contracts. Zach, do you want to talk
So
about
as
that?
we
from-
have, as we discussed, partially in non-public, under the current collective bargaining agreements for the Association of Portsmouth Teachers, and the administrators, it will say liens on the teacher's contract. On an annual basis, you need to authorize us in order to offer contracts to that set of professional staff, salaried staff. And so We presented to you in non-public session, a list of those staff members. And now we'd like to have you vote, to batch approve, those set of folks. You do not, just to clarify, we don't bring to you and you're not part of the process in connection with, non-salaried folks. That's something that happens. We just take care of.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the teacher contracts? Brian? and
Oh.
Pip. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Liz Barrett. Pip Blues. Campbell. Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Everyone, okay, is that consideration? and approval?
Same process. Batch approval.
Discussion?
I have a quick question on this, which I didn't think to ask earlier, but it's not specific. I'm just curious, when there's somebody who appears on both lists, are they under two separate contracts? For all the
Oh, I made a mistake.
teachers?
Was there somebody?
I think so, but you took them away, so I can't be sure. There's nobody who would fill
Yeah.
both those. There's nobody.
One or the other. Well, now if I go back and have to read the whole thing again.
I could be wrong. I could have misread.
Discussion? We have a roll call vote.
Liz Barrett. Pip Blues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell. Carrie Nolte. Brian French. Nancy Claiberg. Lisa Rappaport.
I'm going to abstain because I couldn't hear this part of the discussion.
Okay, and Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Matto.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to consideration and approval of policies, and we'll hand it over to Pip.
Oh, we're gonna
When you go. When you go.
All right. Okay, we have 3 policies for the first reading tonight. The first is the meeting minutes policy, BEDG. And I will tell you that somehow we managed to spend the entire hour of our set aside that we had set aside for our committee meeting on this policy. Not even sure why, honestly, but we concluded that in
Wow.
fact, we did want a policy on minutes. Because although we have kept minutes very consistently for our board meeting, we don't always do them in the same way and also, and this applies not only to board meetings, but to committee meetings as well. So we felt like it was important to have a policy that laid out how meetings should be kept, how minutes should be kept. And so the sample policy from NHSBA included a few options, one of which was around sealed minutes and how those should be handled. The option 1 was a pretty specific way that they should be handled, and option 2 was not to have any specificity about how they should be handled. We elected to go with option 1, which lays out how they should be handled, and the only changes that we made to that you'll see in the red markup is in this section where there was the option to add language specific to your setup. So the setup that we chose was that the chair would designate 2 board members who would work with the superintendent to serve as the sealed minutes review committee, which would be an ad hoc committee that would then go away after that process was carried out. So that committee will bring to you, as mentioned earlier in the meeting, that committee will bring to you a recommendation, and then the board will vote on whether to keep those minutes sealed for another 10 years or unseal them. So that's the only change that we made to the policy as it stood from the sample. So does anybody have questions about that?
why don't you make a
Oh,
motion to
right.
approve first?
Motion to approve
Thank you. Is there a
first
second?
reading of meeting minutes.
Second,
Thank you.
right? I have to second.
Yes, thank you.
Liz have a
No, I
comment.
was like, get in before Brian.
So I just want to clarify, so in it says the board will appoint a minute taker or recording clerk to prepare the minutes of each meeting. I know that there's been like an outside person still doing the minutes, and so is there, when it says we have to appoint somebody, does there need to be like a formal appointment, like, or like, what if, like, are we, so, I mean, is this person just basically getting the recording and then making minutes from it? Is that how we're doing it? Or is this, there's just a gentleman here? I don't, like, no, so, I mean, so, where, so is that how it's?
Right, board chair.
Yeah.
Not taking minutes.
Oh, okay. Oh, here, you wanna sit here? Oh. Apparently this was next to me. It's okay. I was wondering, cause I didn't, okay.
Everyone, that's Matt Curtin. He's the chair of the RIDE. Are you the chair of the RIDE board? Okay.
Oh, so this is your seat. Your name tag's right here, actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, actually-
Yeah.
The only
I don't
good-
fight
The
it,
only
sorry.
good thing is the chair's more comfortable.
Is it
Yeah.
more comfortable?
Yeah, a little
This is,
bit.
I've had worse. I
Oh,
gotta be
time.
honest. This is okay.
Yeah. So, here,
Oh, no, that's okay.
pull up a chair.
We'll have him speak at the end of the meeting.
Okay, yeah, so I guess I just wondered if there's any sort of formalities that we need to follow to just be sure that, like, if we're appointing it and this is what our policy is, then I don't know.
Well, I'll speak just generally to that, which is that there was some acknowledgement during our meeting that there has been some inconsistency in the way meeting minutes are being kept. We've been keeping them, but they're not always consistent. So, and it was Zach's suggestion that maybe we bring in someone from legal.
Wadley Star, the legal.
Wadley Star to sort of give us a reminder of how we should be handling minutes. And so that we can all be on the same page and that we can make sure that we're doing it consistently going forward. So that's the general answer to your question, but I don't know if
Should
that.
we also, though, have that person or the company that's doing this for us also have a copy of our policy of what we expect from them and, just be sure that they receive that and also,
Oh, do you mean the person who's taking the minutes? or
yeah, for
Wadley
the
Star?
board meetings. I mean, obviously this applies to committees as well, but yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, where we're supposed to be appointing somebody, but I don't know where that person is and they're out in the ether somewhere. So is there like sort of a formal, like, for this meeting, we are definitely having this firm do the minutes and they're gonna follow these protocols that we've provided to them, sort of thing. What are the formalities there? So I guess I'm just, I get curious what the discussion was around that, if there's any sort of, thoughts on that, or just, maybe throw it out there that we may,
The truth is, we didn't talk about a mechanism by which the board would. Where you're speaking to, we didn't imagine it, we didn't talk about it. in all
Well,
honesty.
we discussed the fact that we're having some struggles finding a person or keeping a person to keep our minutes.
Yep.
And that's ongoing and that's developing because we continue to be looking for this person. I know you had somebody do the
Absolutely.
last minute, so I don't
So we
know
have- yes,
where that is,
we-
but.
We've had someone who's been with us the last several meetings who we're hoping is gonna continue.
So I think the answer is that the administrators are appointing that person.
okay, yeah, because I mean, it says right here, the board will appoint a minute taker record clerk to prepare the minutes of each meeting. So I guess I'm just wondering if we're gonna make a policy, should we sort of edit it that it's the board or superintendent, or the board, may use the superintendent? Just, I guess it's just, it's kind of, I mean, at the end of the day, we're gonna have minutes, but if it's in our policy that we're appointing somebody, I just want to be sure that that's.
Yeah, I think that's a valid,
Could we make that edit right now and still vote on it?
I think we can, it's
Yeah.
the first reading anyway, so I
Oh,
think
it's
we
first
can vote
reading.
on it
Okay,
regardless,
I'm
but.
sorry.
But I think when we bring
Okay.
it back, maybe we'll have a clearer idea. of
And
how
honestly,
they're
if,
looking at it.
sorry, and then honestly, if, I don't know, I just wonder if we're getting people saying, we're not gonna take your minutes because this policy for how we want the minutes or where our demands are too much or something like that, then maybe we need to reconsider, the policy or, I mean, obviously some of these are probably by statute. But I want to be reasonable here and not overkill anybody, and so that we can actually have somebody that's gonna continue on with us.
Okay, well, thank you for that comment. Are there any other comments? Okay, let's vote on the first reading for BEDG.
Liz Barrett,
Yes.
Pip Clues,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Harry Nolte, Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Matto,
Yes.
pass.
All right, thank you.
Pip, you're on.
Okay, the next policy is false alarms, bomb, active shooter, and other such threats. As you'll see, we have changed the name of this policy. Our policy was fairly outdated. And didn't cover some of the more current, technologies and actual threats that we face. So we elected to go with the NHSBA model policy, and that is what you see here.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. I was just gonna ask. Second, is there a second?
Second.
All right,
Wait.
is there discussion? Is there any discussion or questions? Oh, right.
So there are no changes from the model policy?
No, I believe we literally model policy and put it right in, including title and everything.
It's more of a Zach question, but is this what's currently in practice?
One of the issues, so for example, the difference, one. That's one example. Didn't reflect what existed.
My, like a specific follow-up on that was just like the superintendent or their designee. Is that sort of, are people used to that, or do building principals automatically act as your designee unless?
We have, in terms, I mean, we were gonna make, so we have protocols in place in order for people to make decisions. Depending on the timeliness of how decisions need to be made, that may or may not involve somebody else. Something needs to be made fast and at the ground level. Most of the time, that's not where we're at. And we have the ability to have, dialogue with building principals around what we're going to do and the steps we're going to take. And not long into events, we also very quickly can be in situations where we're developing unified command with others and that occurring as well. So the newer policy allows us more flexibility to be in line with what existing practices.
Okay, okay. Oh, just brief question. I remember when we were dealing with these policies before, this district crisis prevention and response plan. Is that what it's being called across the board? Most definitely. I mean, I didn't refer back to EDCA, but I know that there's in the school specific emergency operations plan is captioned in title as if that's the name of the plan. So I think obviously moved forward with the first reading of this, but for second reading, just it'd be good to have a quick look to make sure all those titles are actually the titles that we're using in all the other policies, because that became a huge issue when we were talking about all these different plans before. So so on this one, I see the district crisis prevention and response plan, and I see an emergency operations plan. So I just want to be sure that in the district communication plan. So just assume that across the board in our policies, those are all referenced and titled appropriately.
Yeah, thanks. That's always important. And you're right, it has come up many times. We are, as you've heard before, we're working especially hard right now to try to make everything consistent with NHSBA as much as possible so that those things don't become issues. We'll try to put those against the other ones.
All right, fine.
Lisa.
Oh, sorry. So I think I had a question just about that last section 5, line 74 to 78. And I think that we've had some challenges in the past with how we communicate around threats in the schools. And it definitely seems, at least as a parent, like it's gotten much better. over the last, couple of years, but I wonder if we might want to think about naming one place to look for how to communicate, because I wonder if we have consistent information across, a crisis prevention and response plan or the district communication plan. Not to take away flexibility, but just that in some cases, I think people just need to know what to do and what the best practices are when there's a crisis. Do you know, Zach, if there's even language in a district communication plan about this type of stuff at this point? And I guess, what are your thoughts about maybe naming one place for people to look to follow a protocol?
We have at central office a crisis communication plan that has outlined scripts for before, at the onset of an incident, during the incident, at the end of the incident, after action review, with scripts for social media, website, telephone calls, calls going out, calls coming in, information that we would be disseminating through, so that that's all covered. So so once we figure out what's going on, everybody gets the same information goes out, and there are scripts so that people don't have to think in the middle of a crisis.
I would say
So,
maybe more to hit your question, like on the, we said, I mean, the practice basically is that Parent Square is our base.
Mhm.
And then we use, and going back to when Pip talked about channels of communication, and what are we trying to do? Audiences then be able to use those audiences in a crisis to be able to hit multiple channels with the same message. So the cutesy picture of the kids playing on the playground that draws people with for us to echo the message that at its core is we're using the alert mechanism within Parent Square, but then echoing that on our other channels at the same time.
So I think my question might be just whether we want to consider putting a period after "in accordance with the district crisis prevention and response plan." Because if that's detailing the scripts and who does it and when it goes out and what it's supposed to say, it just seems like that might be one situation to consider, having a single spot for people to look so they know what the protocols are. And maybe that's not the case, but that's just something I'm curious about.
That document is not a forward-facing document. Those procedures and protocols for as we're trying to, but it's not, that kind of procedure manual is not a forward-facing document.
And I think in number 5, I think all those either ors are in there because of the final clause, as soon as deemed appropriate under the circumstances, because you don't know at what point a plan is going to make sense, or you're going to have to wait for further instruction.
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to make sure that it would be clear to people who are following it.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
I'm
and-
just briefly, the sites on the bottom, the websites, the e-board solutions, I don't think those should be part of it, obviously. Maybe they do link to something, but they aren't government sites, so I'd be careful linking our websites to, outside sources for RSAs. So that may, the next edit, those may need to be removed and just have.
Goes to GenCore.
Yeah, these
I
are,
didn't click.
these
on
are
it.
from the NHSBA, so.
Yes, I don't know if on the previous policy, it goes to GenCourt, but yeah. But I don't know as far as this one.
All three of them go
Going
to
to keyboard solutions, so I would just be careful, when you guys edit this, that it's
All right,
taken
we'll
out.
check on this. Anyone else? All right, I think we're ready for a roll call.
Liz Barrett,
Yes.
Pip Clues,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte,
Yes.
Brian French,
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg,
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Meadow,
Yes.
passed.
And I just wanted to note, Patty, I'm so glad to hear those things that you said about having the scripts ready to go, because that was something we didn't have not too long ago, and it was a real problem when we talked about some of these plans, so thank you all for your efforts on that front. Okay, our last one for second, I'm sorry, for first reading is the admission policy, JFAA. And this one was updated not too long ago, but we are looking at it, we looked at it again and made not too many recommendations for changes. One was that to sort of try to narrow the use of discretion in relation to age, so that Zach isn't burdened with having to hear a million different cases of why someone's kindergartner should be, or 4-year-old should be able to attend kindergarten. So that is the larger section that you see crossed out, line 16 to 19. And then the other recommendation was that we eliminate the word annually from when we request certificates of residency. That is in part so we can do that as needed anytime, but also because realistically, it's not something we ask for every year from every student. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, did you say?
Second.
You beat him to it.
Are there any questions or discussion? Carrie,
Just curious if we need an end age.
and age.
Like, can I request to be admitted
Oh.
to school? And is there, or is that a state statute?
That's an interesting point that I don't think it's in here.
6 and go to kindergarten?
Or I mean, like,
You mean
I
like?
be 41 and try to get into CTE, because that would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's probably 193.
That's why I gotta look at 193.12, yeah. That's why I was about to pull up and stuff. I don't know. I don't know if you, yeah, it's one of those things where you need a policy that addresses every.
Adam Samway.
I was just curious. I know there's like a specific obligation for special ed.
Right.
And services are provided until 21, 22.
It's recently changed.
But I'll drop it if it's not a thing, but it just seems like.
We can explore, I'm assuming that existing statute puts you in a position where you're not required, if someone wants to enroll at 30, that you're not required to accept that enrollment, but we'll have to do some additional.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable thing to include in a policy that.
So, I know like people get their GEDs and whatnot, so the school could essentially sponsor, and maybe there already is an adult learning program, you know, that's somehow linked to Portsmouth, you know, so, you know, or we offer the test or something to that extent. I know that it's obviously not just GED anymore, there's all these different other programs. But I think you sort of, it can get pretty broad when you're sort of getting into detail about, you know, special education and all this other stuff. So I don't know if this is just a general policy that the School Boards Association is recommending. I mean, there isn't anything listed, you know, down the bottom here of where this policy derives from, other than the RSA at top, 193.12. So maybe the RSA needs to also be listed at the bottom of this one, like other policies. But I don't know if there's a, you know, is this the model policy, or where are we?
No, it is not the model policy.
So we may not need it, maybe sort of like a de facto.
Yeah, I think it's worth, we can look into it between
Okay.
now and the next reading. Lisa has a question. Go ahead, Lisa.
So along the lines of what Carrie raised, it does often happen that people want to redshirt their kids for kindergarten. So we might, I don't know if state law covers this, but if I want to wait till age 6 to start kindergarten because I think my kid is too small, or I want them to be a really, you know, stellar athlete as a 19-year-old senior or whatever. I don't know if we're covered by state statute or if we would need to say something about that there.
So,
Yeah.
statute makes it compulsory for any child of at least under 18 be schooled. So I would suggest to you that the statute says any parent of any child at least 6 years of age and under 18 shall cause such child. So compulsory doesn't extend now to 5-year-olds, which, but our policy says they will be admitted at having reached 5 at whatever it was, September 30th. So,
It doesn't hit 25-year-olds.
and it doesn't speak to 25s. I'm skimming right now. 193.12 actually speaks to residency. 193.1 is compulsory attendance, but nothing there talks about the 30-year-old. So we can keep looking.
I think we can just bounce it off legal. They'll have an answer.
Lisa's question is an interesting one though, because it's about kindergarten specifically.
Yep.
Do you feel that we need a limit on the higher end of kindergarten as well?
I don't think this speaks to placement of a student. I think this just
Right.
talks to enrollment in our schools.
Well, the,
So I think
Okay.
placement would not, because I show up with a student at 7, doesn't mean that, and this is your first engagement with the school district, doesn't mean the school district is gonna place the student in kindergarten.
Okay, that's right.
So-
And we have another policy regarding placement.
And
Lee, did you have a question? Oh.
another point is that, you know, on the other end of we actually are enrolling for PEEP and we're not talking about PEEP on here either. So that's another point of that we've missed on this.
Yes, is PEEP
Is there,
It's
is that in our
separate in
policy?
some way? I don't know.
it's a federally mandated developmental program.
So do our policies apply though?
And it's
To our
not,
PEEP
well, it's
program?
not open to all.
And it's not open, yeah, it's not open admission.
Right.
Again, federal law dictates in that case that we're providing services at a child's 3rd birthday.
3 to 6.
And that continues until their 22nd birthday unless they meet the whatever, the requirements for graduation in the interim. I guess admission into PEEP is really part of the federally prescribed IEP process, not local enrollment or registration. So I'm not sure that really,
But all of our policies
all
apply to PEEP.
PEEP students are students with IEPs.
well,
By design.
we have.
And they're tuitioned in, so they're
Yeah,
not, it's a
that's
different,
tuition.
it's a
And it's
program.
different. It's not,
It's a
program.
program,
Right.
so it's different,
It's not school. I mean,
right?
I know.
Right.
Some people out there won't like having me say that, but it's not a grade level. It's not
Do we
school.
need to
It's-
note that in this policy that we have this program and that it's separate or?
I mean, all of our other policies do apply to the teachers of the PEEP program and other positions that are dealing with PEEP children. So I guess that would be, I mean, if we're gonna have a policy on admission, I guess I just wonder.
But I think the teacher part applies because they're employees of the district
Yeah.
and the board, where the students are under the federal program, which is a completely
So maybe we'd
different
have like an
set of-
asterisk or something like that, I would think.
Disclaim it. Say nothing in this policy is construed
Yeah,
to apply to
30-year-olds.
participation in developmental preschool programs.
Okay, I think we can come back on
Yeah.
for the second reading with, after looking into some of those issues. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Roll call.
Liz Barrett,
Yes.
Pip Blues,
Yes.
Tish Campbell,
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport,
Yes.
Lee Hudson,
Yes.
Byron Meadow,
yeah.
passed.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pip.
Mhm.
You're doing a great job as the chair of that
Mm.
committee. Consideration and approval of Winter Girls Ice Hockey Cooperative Team Memo and Proposal. Zach.
So really quickly on the memo and then I'd love to get a motion on it. We have an existing cooperative girls ice hockey team with Oyster River. And this would Oyster River and our Oyster River's athletic administration, our athletic administration are interested. They were reached out to by Co Brown about expanding this into a tri team. We are in favor of it. See it as positive for our student athletes. We think it is going to create more sustainability within the program as a whole. It's been a reasonably successful program, but is one that we are always, have concerns about our ability to maintain over the long run. We think this would be good we don't see we see no negative impact for our student athletes. And would like the board to agree to enter into a 2-year agreement with Co Brown and Oyster River. And we need your approval in order to make that.
Do we have a motion to approve this.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in the state final 2 years in a row. Something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, we-
I just want to say
just
that
pushed
there
us
was
over
no
the top.
girls ice hockey
was
when I was
me
a student at PHS.
Seriously.
And I didn't start until college and I was terrible as a result. So let's hope this helps some of these other women be a little bit better by the time they get to
Amen.
college.
I was the high school hockey captain.
It's so much hockey, actually.
Any more discussion? Any more discussion? Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Blues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yeah.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Meadow.
Is Lisa okay?
Passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That will be exciting for our girls ice hockey team. Very, very exciting.
She already took her melatonin.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, we have minutes from the policy committee. Pip, do you want to comment on those?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to note that at the end of the minutes, we've been including a list of policies that will be coming up next at our next meeting. And so I just wanted to encourage people to check those ahead of time. And if you have thoughts on any of those month to month, please send them to Zach or myself ahead of time if possible, because or even if you have ideas of who we might want to speak to about them or your personal experience with them, anything that you think would help us do a better job of making recommendations, that would be very helpful. And also, if you're interested in attending a meeting or speaking to a policy, I would love to have that happen ahead of time instead of later on. That way we can keep being as efficient as possible.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Pip. Matt, would you like to tell us about SAU 50?
Definitely make me wait all night. And
Yeah.
it's like, all right, fire up.
Yeah, I didn't prepare a formal report.
Okay.
Showing the some kid sports stuff that I had to wrap up first, but no, I don't have anything to add. This has been quite thorough. It's interesting to come here. It's like living in somebody else's house for a couple of days and so. I would say that in general, I have a strong desire to have more cooperation between our boards. We have our organizing meeting tomorrow for the SAU joint board, and so I'm hoping that we can get regular attendance. And I'd actually like to have the same person attend all the time, because I think that would be beneficial for everybody. It's just a little bit of a tough sell.
Just let them know we're really.
Yeah.
We sent one person from our board to their board?
Oh, you're always welcome. Yeah.
Like, I mean, would that, is that a thing?
We're talking about that at our area committee
Okay.
meetings. We're talking about how we can go back and forth a little bit more than we have in the past.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's an issue for discussion, definitely. Pip,
I also think it would be wonderful for our boards to meet at some point, like all of us, as opposed to just having one
Right.
representative. So I don't know if there's some social.
house?
Yeah, sure. Come on over. You know, just even if it's a brief gathering, it would be nice for us to have some connection, I think.
The joint board is 19 people. So, big enough spot for sure, but yeah.
Nancy said.
And to grow.
okay, we have Lisa. Lisa, what would you like to say?
I had a future agenda question, so I don't know if there's other committee reports. I don't want to hijack that.
No, I think that we're on to that. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I think this was something that was part of Nathan's report and that we talked about a little bit, but I think it might be nice at some point down the line to hear more about the consultancy program that Steve Canosi is doing at the high school. Because, I mean, one, it might just be something that we might want to think about doing more district-wide. And also the whole purpose of it is to get more engagement from students, from teachers, from families about, you know, big issues that are going on, and just getting more visibility around it and more understanding of how it works, I think might just help us draw more people in. So I just wanted to put that out there as a potential future agenda item.
Lisa, Liz?
I had actually had a committee update.
Oh,
I know, I'm actually waiting on some minutes for an older meeting. So I was gonna just draft something small and include it, but I haven't had those yet, so I haven't been able to include it, but I did want to provide an update that there is a new recreation supervisor, Connor Mullen. He started this month. He comes from Concord, Mass Recreation Department, and he's gonna be at our next recreation department meeting. which is gonna be in April. But he's gonna be, his office is gonna be at the community campus, and his focus is gonna be the community campus and after-school programs. Another thing that was provided an update was that summer camp programs at the community campus or through the rec department, 7 of the 8 weeks filled within 19 minutes of online registration opening. You know, the rec department says this is a testament to the high quality product. These were all just residents. I mean, I guess I'm gonna insert my personal opinion here. I mean, I think this shows the high demand for the need for childcare over the summer. And maybe, you know, a question of whether needs are actually going to be met, but also the idea of after school programming. I think it all goes hand in hand. We consistently see, you know, these spaces fill up really quickly. So those are the updates I just wanted to share with the board as well.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Liz. Okay, anyone else have a committee update?
Oh, and is there any update on Anne's dedication?
Oh, no, we are working on a date. The plaque is up, it's covered. This is the Ann Walker plaque at Dondero School. We just have to work out a date when we can all go there
The
and
tape holds.
uncover the plaque. Yes.
Keep waiting
Zach
for a
and I will
call,
work on
ready to
that.
tear it
Yeah,
down.
We'll
get to
work
this.
on that.
Flush
Okay.
it.
We have to reopen the public comment session. There is no one here to make public comment, so I guess we're all set. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, do we have to do a roll?
Yes.
Okay, let's do a roll call.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Blues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Harry Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, that might be a record. Let's see, those seats might have more cushion.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.